about our brine and why we're brining. So what I want you to have on standby is a baking sheet or something that we can put the chicken onto. We're going to use some paper towel. I got some sheets of it here that we're going to pat the chicken dry with. Okay, so we're going to get out of the brine. Let's talk about brining first, though. This is the most basic brine, okay? Salt and water, okay? In every brine, you have to have salt. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Salt is the magic ingredient. It's the mineral that makes this thing work. So brining does two major things. Number one, it's going to season your meat. And number two, it's going to moisten your meat. So you do brining with lean meats. So white chicken meat, turkey breast, lean pork chops, pork tenderloin. All those things should be brined. You can even do like a whole turkey or a whole chicken if you have a big enough bucket and the ability to keep it cold enough. Brining is amazing. So it brings in moisture. Here's the thing with white meat, okay? Chicken, turkey, lean pork. With pork, it doesn't really matter so much in the way of the temperature of cooking because pork can be served medium. Some people serve pork medium rare. I keep it at medium, okay? A little tinge of pink in the center. That's great. You don't want to overcook it, otherwise it gets dry. But chicken, because of salmonella bacteria, has to be cooked all the way through. You have to reach 71 Celsius or 160 Fahrenheit to kill that bacteria. So what most people do when they're cooking a piece of chicken is they know they can't serve it, well, how do you want your chicken tonight? Oh, I have my medium rare, thanks. They know they can't do that. So instead of poisoning your family, you cook the heck out of it. And it's great, and I commend you for not poisoning your family, but nobody wants a dry piece of chicken either, where you have to get like 6 glasses of water with your dinner because the chicken's so dry. You can cook your chicken to the point of where it's just at that temperature and then stop cooking it. You're going to have better moisture, better texture. You're going to enjoy the meal a lot more. But it means you have to babysit it. By brining, the salt, again, the major magic ingredient there is going to suck in the moisture of the water into the meat. That's what it does. The salt does that. And so you have a moisture barrier now. So even if you went over and above what you're supposed to, it's still going to be moist, okay? And because the salt is the magic ingredient that's doing that, is drawing in the moisture, guess what? The salt is dissolved in the water, so what else is it bringing in? It's bringing in the salt. So your piece of meat becomes seasoned from the inside out. So if you're ever going to adapt one of your current recipes that you don't brine and you're going to introduce brining to it, the only thing you really have to remember is that the chicken is already salted. So back off on the amount of salt you use in a rub or in the dish altogether that you would put on top of the chickens. You don't need as much salt now that we have all that salt in there, okay? And for this recipe, 6 tablespoons of salt. You might be thinking, 6 tablespoons of salt, that's a lot of salt for 4 chicken breasts. Hold on, don't get your knickers in a knot. You're pouring out most of that salt down the drain. You need that kind of concentration for 6 cups of water. Otherwise, it's not going to do anything. You might as well not even bother. It doesn't mean that these pieces of chicken are salt magnets when they just suck up all the salt and you're pouring pure water down the drain. It doesn't mean that, okay? You just need to have that kind of concentration in order for any kind of brining action to work. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, this is the most basic brine, salt and water. When we do our apricot pecan pork chops, we'll be taking the brine one step farther, having a little bit more complex. And in that class, we'll talk about creating a more complicated brine if you want to for other recipes. And we'll talk more about that then at that class on June 8th. Before I dive in there, just a reminder to keep one hand clean and one hand dirty, okay? So with your dirty hand, keep it designated dirty and just touch your chicken with that one in case you want to touch your whiskey glass or a salt checker or touch your laptop. You're not contaminating salmonella bacteria all over your kitchen. Michelle, you had a question there?
Yeah, I was just wondering about how dry rubs fit in with that, with brining. Because when I do a tenderloin, I usually brine it and then dry rub it.
Yeah, and you can, but you have to make sure that you're not having an overload of salt in your dry rub. Okay. So, which is kind of complicated if you're buying the rub, right? But if you're making your own rubs, you can adjust it. So I have a couple of rubs on hand for pork and chicken that are low sodium. So I make them myself and I just back off the salt on those ones that are actually labeled in my cupboard, low sodium chicken rub, low sodium pork rub. So for the times when I have lean pieces that I have brined, I'll use that rub instead of my other rub.
Okay, I just wondered if you thought it was overkill or if it's
It all really depends on the piece of meat and how long you brine for. So a guy I know in the barbecue world, I won't mention his name, but he's told me that he really believes in the science that you can't overbrine, like you can't overbrine something, it won't become too salty. I disagree because I've been there and I've tasted it. So in this case, we have our chicken breast in this concentration of brine, where it's 6 cups of water to 6 tablespoons of table salt. And we do for at least 1 hour. I would push it to maybe 2, 3 hours tops, but I wouldn't go all day with this. I wouldn't put this in the brine before you go to work and let it sit there for 8 to 10 hours and take it out. It's going to be too salty. I guarantee it's going to be too salty. I don't care what anybody says. I've tasted it. So it depends on how long you brined, and it also depends on the concentration of salt that you're using as well, because that's going to dictate how much salt is actually being pulled into that piece of meat. So I know it sounds complicated, but all those variables will equal how much salt you need to put on the outside as well. Okay. So again, it's just trial and error. I always use this ratio, and this ratio is a really good one to remember, because you just have to remember the number 4 cups of water, 1/4 of a cup of table salt. Okay. And we've just had a little bit more times by 1.5 to say 6 cups of water and 6 tablespoons of salt. Or if you want to remember 1 cup of water for every tablespoon of table salt. Okay. And the reason why I say table salt in there, because some people will have kosher salt on hand and they will substitute a recipe with kosher salt, which is nothing wrong with kosher salt because it's sodium chloride, just like table salt is. But the problem with kosher salt, it's bigger granules. So you have more air pockets in a big measurement like that of 6 tablespoons. So you're not really getting 6 tablespoons of sodium chloride in there because you have more gaps in there. So you'd have to actually do more kosher salt measurement to make it the same concentration. Make sense, everybody?
Thank you.
Okay, you bet. All right. So let's take it out. I'm going to designate my left hand as my dirty hand, and we're going to take our chicken breast out of the brine, and we're just going to put it on the paper towel. Okay. My chicken breast still has the fillet attached. You'll see that there. There you go. See that? But I'm just keeping it on there because it doesn't bother me any, right? If you want to pull off the fillet and save them for a stir fry, you can do that. But I'm just going to keep them on there and cook them as big chicken breasts, okay? Get rid of your brine now. We don't need it. Don't save it, okay? It's salmonella bacteria in there.